My grandparents are providing each of my grandchildren with enough money to buy a house after college. All of us have to complete our education on our own. My older brother has already paid off his debts, which allowed him to make a 50% down payment and keep the funds in the bank for emergencies. I, on the other hand, was able to get a scholarship and, thanks to my father's work program, bought a small house near transportation hubs. It made my commute to work easier. A few years later, I got married. At my wedding, my husband met my cousin Ivan. She is really beautiful, and although I know I am not inferior to her, she still looks great. About 3 months after they got married, they started having an affair. I found out about it as they were careless. This discovery hurt me, but even more I experienced anger. I wanted to immediately kick him out of the house, but instead I decided to file for divorce. Before undertaking this, I waited almost 6 months for her to graduate from university. After I told my grandparents what was going on, they were supportive. I stayed with them for a few weeks while my husband tried to contact me. However, I refused to talk to him. My grandmother helped me find a lawyer for my divorce. At that time, my family basically stopped communicating with my ex-husband. My home, purchased before the marriage, appeared to be protected by a prenuptial agreement. My grandparents, adherents of the old views on marriage and family, were greatly angered by what was happening. They recognized that they could not change the situation, but they expressed their displeasure. Eventually, they handed me money intended for my cousin because she had taken out student loans knowing she could repay them, but had chosen a major that did not guarantee a high income after graduation. My ex-husband begged me to let him stay, claiming he still loved me. I expressed that if he loved me, he would not have become intimate with other women. I am convinced that he has no feelings for me. He only realized his mistakes when he realized how seriously messed up things were. My aunt and uncle are angry at me for causing their daughter's major financial loss. I want to make it clear that I never planned to embezzle her money. My goal was only to ensure that the grandparents did not pass the funds on to her. Receiving the money was an unexpected bonus for me. Everything had already happened and the divorce would take time. The money in my retirement account is safe. My ex-husband has lost his home and my cousin can go anywhere. I feel guilty for not confronting them right away and bringing this to my grandparents' attention. My ex asked me how I found out about everything. I replied to this idiot that all of his messages were displayed on our shared tablet before he had a chance to delete them. I have screenshots of everything saved, so I wonder if I have become an idiot in this situation by using my husband's affair with my cousin against them. You're not an idiot. Your cousin caused this on her own. Your aunt and uncle can cover her expenses. You didn't ask your grandparents to do what they did. They are entitled to use their money as they see fit. Your cousin tried to outsmart you, but you avoided the blow. By finalizing it, you got rid of the problem. Your ex wasn't on top of things, and it's sad that your aunt and uncle are more concerned about money than their kids' actions. Your cousin was in your husband's bed for a reason. Both of them acted foolishly and are now facing the consequences of their actions. Like many, I was long with my partner and introduced many of her wonderful cousins and coworkers. None of them thought we all needed intimacy because, heck, your ex-husband met your cousin at his own wedding, and it led to the destruction of their lives. It's sad and funny at the same time. If I were to suddenly decide to get involved with a married man, I would at least try not to get involved with my cousin's husband, especially if I wasn't due to receive an inheritance from my grandparents. She no doubt had more to lose. So good for you. Oops, that's how to get revenge the right way. It's fun. Even if someone disagrees with your grandparents, they can't speak out or they'll get retaliated against. Your aunt and uncle are mad because their daughter made a mistake. They are idiots themselves and should have apologized and punished their daughter accordingly, but they probably never did before, which is what led to her inappropriate behavior. Next story. A few weeks ago, an unpleasant situation occurred. I have an acquaintance who, for convenience, I will call Lindsay. Now, I use the word friend rather casually since I don't consider her a friend. We're both in our early 30s and I've known her for 10 years. However, over the past few years, our intimacy has waned considerably. When I was trying to get pregnant, Lindsay told me that she couldn't imagine me as a mother and that not everyone should become a parent. She thought it was okay for me to give up motherhood, even though I was pregnant after years of trying. Late one night, possibly while intoxicated, Lindsay texted me. She claimed that she would be a better mother than me and mentioned that I always had the option of adoption. Lindsay has no children of her own, but once worked as a nanny. Based on her comments, I decided not to invite her to my baby shower. My son was born a few months ago and was named after a family member who tragically passed away. It's a fairly rare, but quite common name, ranking in the top 300 names in the US. I'd recently posted a picture of my baby in a group chat. Lindsay, while in that chat, nicknamed him by his long name as a joke, as if his name was James, she would call him Giant Peach. She then made the point that my son's name was terrible and that he would be laughed at as a child and teenager. I objected, noting that when she had kids, she could do whatever she wanted with them, including choosing a name. Lindsay was silent and later admitted to me sideways that she had learned about possible infertility. She said my comment was cruel. I was sorry to hear that, but I don't think it justifies what she said about my baby. She stopped communicating with me, assuming I acted like an idiot. Edited. My son was already born when she commented on his name. Your friend Lindsay was being abusive, petty, and possibly jealous. She had tried to get pregnant earlier but was unsuccessful. This may have caused her frustration, which she took out on you. People who make statements like that aren't really friends. In my opinion, I'd rather be away from her in my life. But why would you bother with such a rude woman? She showed no concern for you when she made all those nasty comments. There's no point in maintaining a friendship with someone who doesn't value your feelings. You can actually enjoy time with the baby by keeping her at a distance. Sure, it's sad that Lindsay can't have children. However, that doesn't give her the right to speak disparagingly about motherhood and the children of others. I understand why she might behave that way, but you also have every right to be outraged by her behavior. Now I want to tell a different story. I am 28 years old and male. My wife is also 28. We joined the bonds of marriage 4 years ago. All this time I felt like we were looking in the same direction, especially when it came to intimacy with my family. But recently, she suggested we move. I expressed my disagreement with the idea. Now she is upset about my stance. It makes me wonder if I really did the right thing. Let me describe the situation in more detail. I grew up in a warm and friendly family. My parents are in their 60s. I have siblings, John who is 30 years old, Matto who is 26, Isabel who is 24, and Dina who is 22. We all live within a few miles of each other. We have developed a tradition of getting together for family dinner every Sunday. I truly cherish these moments as they bring me great pleasure. Before we were married, I made it clear to my future wife, Tricia, that I had no plans to move away from my family. At the time, she seemed to be in agreement, and from my observations, she really enjoyed the interaction with my family. They always got along well. Recently, however, Tricia has been thinking about moving. She expressed her desire to explore new places rather than stay in one city her whole life. While I understand her desire, my roots and connection to my family compel me to stay. Moving would reduce the amount of time I can spend with my family, given my business at work and time spent with Tricia. I especially value our weekly family dinners and am not willing to give them up. When I shared my decision to stay with Tricia, it caused her disappointment. She questioned the appropriateness of us wanting to be so close to my family and called it odd. I realized that Tricia may have different views on family relationships, making it difficult for her to understand my position. But for me, family is an integral part of my life, and I am not willing to compromise on this issue. In the midst of the argument, I told Tricia that if she decided to move, she could do it alone. This statement was not an ultimatum, but rather an acknowledgement that we have different ideas about life. She has since accused me of putting my family above hers and has stopped talking to me. I don't want to hurt her or make her feel unimportant, but I also can't give up the closeness I share with my family. It's hard for me to understand why anyone would put anything above family. I'm sorry, but you're wrong. You should spend a weekend away from your family to focus on your marriage. Your wife feels unimportant to you. Listen to her if you don't want to lose her. It sounds like right now she's just keeping you company between family gatherings, which are a priority for you. No matter how wonderful your in-laws are, weekly dinners seem unnecessary to me. Perhaps monthly dinners would be appropriate, but every weekend is too much. Opie, you're an adult. You need to decide what's more important to you, your wife or your family. You choose not to walk away from your family. Live your life as you see fit, but find a woman who can accept it. I envision your future. You're 55 years old, taking care of your parents. You're left with your siblings who have their own developed lives. They only stop by once every month or two. Instead of spending time with your wife, you are left a hardened bachelor, spending your days complaining about your ex-wife to your brother and sister. My next story. I'm 34 years old male. My 8-year-old son Jackson was having his tonsils removed. The surgery was scheduled for Monday. During the week prior to the procedure, my ex-wife and I informed our families of the upcoming event. On the day of the surgery, only my ex and I were present at the hospital. The preparation took an hour and the surgery itself took about 30 minutes. During the procedure, complications arose. Jackson's blood pressure dropped dramatically, probably due to a reaction to the anesthesia. Doctors considered this the first warning sign. After the surgery, nurses moved him to his room and checked his vital signs. 30 minutes later, my ex's parents, her husband, and his 2 children showed up unexpectedly. They brought balloons and gifts. I thought they were going overboard, and although I felt bad that I hadn't been informed of the intent of their visit, I couldn't stay mad for long. After a while, the nurse came over and informed me that Jackson needed his father. My son was feeling very anxious at this time due to the anesthesia. The kids fell asleep, but my son kept crying and yelling at me. I had never seen him in such a state. As I was hugging and comforting him, I suddenly saw my ex and her family walk through the door. They were noisy. Jackson didn't recognize them and started to get nervous. His stepbrother started laughing and videotaping what was happening. His stepmother tried to kiss him. The grandparents were acting inappropriately. I asked everyone to keep their voices down as Jackson was upset. My ex objected that I was being rude. I responded by stating that I had not invited any of them. My ex's mother stated that they were invited. I demanded that everyone leave the room before I made them leave. My ex left expecting me to apologize to everyone. I'm ready to talk, but I'm not going to apologize unless they acknowledge my feelings. My annoyance was heightened by the fact that my ex invited everyone without putting me on notice. It wasn't a school performance, and besides, my son has no memory of that day because of the anesthesia he was given that morning. Coming out of anesthesia is one of the most unpredictable and vulnerable times for a person. I am amazed that after my surgeries at the hospital, no outsiders were allowed in my room unless I myself authorized it. In your son's case, the hospital staff should not have allowed visitors without your consent. I would go to the hospital administration with a complaint. Your ex may have pressured them, but that doesn't excuse what was done. I can't believe a mother would allow foster children to laugh and film your son in that condition. That would have made me boil with anger, and they probably even considered posting it on TikTok. If this is how these kids are being raised, it's a big mistake. Starting to question their safety with guardians like that. She is clearly paying more attention to her new family. If I were you, I would consider requesting full custody. No wonder the child was so scared. I would have to say, this is not a "I'm sorry you were offended" kind of apology. I asked you to leave because you can't just barge in on my son, who was not only very upset but also going through a medical reaction, and then videotape it and ridicule him. I can see why she is now your ex. A story that really surprised me. My son Robbie is 25 and recently married my wonderful daughter-in-law Ella, who is also 25. They met last year in college and started dating. The first Christmas they were together, Robbie brought Ella home. She immediately became a part of our family. Before we got married, Ella spoke to me several times about the complicated relationship with her family. She mentioned that her parents were not the best people. Ella's parents were always extremely strict with her. My son told me that he was shocked at the way they talked to their daughter. Sometimes they put their own interests ahead of her needs. At the wedding was the first time I saw how they treated her, and I was extremely disgusted with it. Ella especially loves chocolate cake, but she was rarely able to taste it in front of her parents as they cannot tolerate chocolate. For her birthdays, she could never choose a chocolate cake. Instead, there was always a red velvet cake decorated as if it were for an adult, not a child. Even when Ella became an adult, she felt pressured to choose a red velvet cake for her birthday. Robbie advised her to choose what she wanted, but she didn't think the struggle was worth it. I have always loved to bake, and baking for my family is something very important to me. I try to bake a chocolate cake for Ella because I know how much she loves it. Last weekend was Ella's 25th birthday and she threw a party. Again, her parents made her make a red velvet cake. I suggested to Ella that if she was willing, she could bake her favorite chocolate cake. She was hesitant at first, but then happily agreed, with me assuring her that if her parents complained, she could put the blame entirely on me. I added that Ella deserved better treatment. I baked her a chocolate cake with chocolate frosting. Ella was so happy that her parents were not happy about it. When I saw that they were going to scold Ella for the cake, I immediately intervened. I explained to them that I baked the cake and I wanted to please Ella with her favorite treat. They asked me who I was and I explained that I knew about the tradition of red velvet cakes at her holidays. They were annoyed and outraged throughout the party. Afterward, I received several text messages complaining about my actions. Ella was also subjected to their anger. She told me it wasn't my fault, but recognized that she was having a hard time dealing with the aftermath. Robbie suggested that Ella start therapy so that she could learn how to better manage her relationship with her parents. So she is looking for a therapist like me. Ella said her parents have behaved irrationally and continue to be angry with me. They place their anger on Ella, which she perceives as my fault. Such petty and immature behavior by Ella's parents only complicates the situation. God, you're not an idiot. Bring chocolate cake to every event you're invited to, and even the ones you're not invited to. Chocolate cake is even delivered to airmans when they go on vacation. Bring chocolate fudge. There are constant arguments over this. Petty. Wow, just wow. You're a hero. It breaks my heart that Ella was raised as if her parents were petulant 5-year-olds. I sincerely hope that therapy helps Ella and that she finds the courage to stop associating with these horrible people. It's so nice to hear about a positive relationship between mother-in-law and daughter-in-law, which is really rare. I'm glad Ella finally has a caring mother figure in her life. Thank you for your support of Ella.